What's up, guys? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of our videos. Also, make sure you follow us all over social media so you don't miss any of our content or show announcements. Do you think that this is LeBron's last chance to win a title? If next year even they improve the team, he will be on the same level and get the Lakers to come back into contention. I don't think this is LeBron's last chance. I think next year will certainly be his last chance in terms of like at a star level. There's an off season here where the Lakers immediately become a buyout destination, or not a buyout destination, a veteran minimum destination. The Lakers are going to get some discounted talent this summer because you want to go play in LA for Luka Doncic and LeBron James and have an opportunity to contend for a title. Like, that's going to be really appealing to people, especially players that are play finishers that would benefit from what Luka Doncic does. The next year's Lakers, I expect to be a top-tier contender right out the gates. I think they're going to be a really, really good team with a summer to rebuild around Luka and LeBron. That said, right before LeBron strained his groin against the Celtics, he was playing at a top 5 level. You combine that with Luka Doncic, who has been playing at a top 5 level since then. The two of them together with Austin Reeves, with Rui Hachimura, with Jackson Hayes as the vertical spacer, with Dorian Finney-Smith, Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt. This is certainly the best chance he's had since 2021. And I certainly consider this to be a real chance. I just think he'll probably have a slightly better chance next year. Now, to your point, LeBron will be 41 next year when they get to the postseason. He'll be older. He probably won't be as good. There will be some small amount of decline, barring a severe injury. If that's the case, though, with better supporting talent, and now that Luka's in the picture, they don't need LeBron's top end as much anymore. They need a consistent floor with him, which I still think will be there next year. And I think that that's something that they will be able to leverage into competing again for a title one more time next season. This is an interesting one. Who's a bigger liability on defense between Jokic and Luka? This one's tough. I think they're close, but I would give a slight edge in terms to who's a bigger liability to Luka. And ultimately, it just comes down to size. They both really struggle. Neither of them can guard one-on-one on the perimeter very well in space. They're both elite defensive rebounders, which I think is an asset on the defensive end of the floor that is under-discussed. Like, Luka has helped make the Lakers a serviceable rebounding team despite a lack of size at the center position because he's an excellent defensive rebounder. Not as an athlete, but he just has a nose for the ball, meaning he's just good at anticipating where the ball is going to come off the rim, and he's got a good pursuit of the ball that allows him to get a lot of defensive rebounds. That said, two things. Jokic is a little bit better defensive rebounder than Luka. And two, Jokic is big, which allows you to set up potential defensive schemes that keep him around the rim or put him in situations where he can be successful. It's harder to do with Luka. Point being, if you're building an elite defense from scratch, I think it's a little bit easier to build one around Jokic than it is to build one around Luka. That said, they're both defensive liabilities. Jokic has been a substantial defensive liability since he won the title. I don't know what's going on there. He just hasn't really committed to that end of the floor as well as he used to. They're both bad on that end, but I would give Jokic a slight edge as a better defender than Luka. Where would a second title put Giannis all time? I assume top 10. And if that is the case, does he become undoubtedly the greatest player of this generation? So first of all, I think Giannis is very far away from a second title. I think it will require him changing teams. But like we talked about in the show on Wednesday, there's a version of this where he gets traded to Oklahoma City and he can win a title as soon as next year. My thing is, like, you have to start digging into it. Like, let's say that Giannis has 2 titles in this era, and his 2 titles are in 2021, in the COVID year, beating the injury-demolished Nets, the Trae Young Hawks, and the Devin Booker Suns, and winning a title on the Oklahoma City Thunder team that we've talked about would be the most talented roster since the 2018 Warriors versus what Nikola Jokic has accomplished in his era. Again, I think all titles are titles, but we can all agree that no 2 titles are the same in terms of just the degree of difficulty and the way they resonate in the court of public opinion. I just think Jokic has been a better basketball player over the course of this generation than Giannis. And so unless Giannis did something insane, like let's say win the title with this year's Bucks, I would have a hard time moving him past Jokic. Now, to be clear, if Giannis goes and carries this Bucks team to a title, totally different conversation. I would argue that Giannis winning with this Bucks team would be a more impressive accomplishment than anything Jokic has done over the course of his career so far. So like a lot of it just depends on the circumstances surrounding that second title. How do you view career accolades factoring into your all-time rankings? Accolades like titles, gold medals, MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, All-NBA, career point, rebound, assist totals, scoring champion, etc., compared to eye test, and who's better. I would argue compared to most people who cover the league, I look at awards less. There's then a certain amount of politics involved. There's a certain amount of like data and advanced metrics involved and how that can kind of poison that sort of situation. I do pay attention to that sort of thing. Like I think, all NBA, for instance, like if a guy is racking up first team all NBAs, it's a pretty good sign that he's just been, perennially considered one of the 5 best players in the league. If a guy is, perennially getting like Jokic winning 3 MVPs in 4 years, I don't think that's an accomplishment that you can just ignore or make light of. That said, to me, ultimately what I look at as the number one accomplishment is a singular player performing for a team in long playoff runs / championship runs. You can't only look at championship runs because only one of the 30 teams wins. And so there's a certain amount of like if a guy just routinely every year, like Jimmy Butler, for instance, like him just routinely taking his team to the conference finals and finals year after year like he did with the Heat there for a while, that to me is more impressive than a guy racking up a bunch of regular season accolades, right? Like, for instance, like if you asked me who I thought was a better basketball player, Jimmy Butler or James Harden, I'm going to pick Jimmy Butler because James Harden has all of these accolades, but he's struggled to get it translated to the phase of basketball that determines who wins the trophy. Ultimately, why do we play NBA basketball? We play NBA basketball for the Larry O'Brien trophy. That is the one thing that everything comes down to. From the moment you show up to training camp and you have those first meetings with the coaching staff and they start establishing their expectations and culture and stuff, what do they talk about? We're here to get the Larry O'Brien trophy. That same goal translates all the way through. They've added things. We have our in-season tournament now as a mix-up. Obviously Olympic basketball carries its own weight. But ultimately, the dream for every professional basketball player in the world is to make it to the NBA and to win the Larry O'Brien trophy. And so, to me, everything in the context of the pursuit of that and what translates to the pursuit of that is going to outweigh the accolades. Doesn't mean the accolades don't matter. Doesn't mean the accolades aren't something that I factor in. And on the pursuit of the Larry O'Brien trophy front, you don't even necessarily have to get it for me to think that you're capable of getting it. Like there's a version of Jimmy Butler's career where he plays with more talent and he has 2 or 3 titles. There's a version of it where he plays for the San Antonio Spurs and the Toronto Raptors and he gets multiple titles the way that a guy like Kawhi Leonard did, right? And so even though I think Kawhi Leonard at his peak was a better player than Jimmy Butler, I think Jimmy's closer to that level than he is to the James Harden type of regular season accolade machine that can struggle to succeed in the postseason context.